StreamYard, and it has been nothing but a challenge. Sorry, we're a little bit behind. Welcome to Poor Decisions, the show where we grab a beverage of your choice, whatever it could be, coffee, water, doesn't matter. I'm double fisting today. I got a little whiskey and I got a beer, and we just have a conversation. I should say a couple of things of note. Um, there is a probability, though small, that we may have to, and we, because I have a guest in the studio, I'll talk about that in a second. We may have to vacate this episode quickly because we have a child at a spend the night party, and this child may decide to want to come home, and so we may have to dip out on it. So that could very well happen. Anyway, Poor Decisions, the show. Look, I just wanted to make something where we can talk about business, we can talk about wrestling, we can talk about movies, we can talk about literally anything we want to do. I think it's important to have a conversation where that's not just, oh my God, we talk about pixel peeping and camera technology all the time. And frankly, the guest that's in the studio with me doesn't want to hear that stuff anyway. She has enough of that. So on this portion of the episode, I wanted to lead in with something totally different. And I don't know how many of you are married or have partners or whatever your relationship status may be, but I thought it was kind of an interesting bit of conversation. She agreed to do it, maybe because she was half asleep when I pitched it at her. But to have a conversation about what it's like to marry into the business, or so maybe some of you have a video production company, or you're a YouTuber or a content creator, and you have a significant other that's involved, and bring somebody into the business, not necessarily even directly working, although her story is a little bit different, but it's still the idea that you suddenly step into the business and they're thrown into it as well. And I think it's an interesting bit of conversation. A lot of times it's overlooked or it's not talked about. At least I've not found anything on YouTube about it. If you do, you can find it on TikTok where it's other content creators making other content. That's not what this is. This is raw live conversation. If you see me reaching, it's from my laptop to see what's going on. So in the chat, I see Philip's here and Jeff Fagan is here. Hey, Jeff, good to see you, buddy. Always a treat. Always a delight. Kevin Kelly, welcome back, Kevin. Good to see you, man. It's been a minute. Thanks for hanging out with us. So, so I'm going to jump into the conversation. You guys keep the chat going. If you have questions, go for it. So let me introduce my guest. So my guest is a world-class costume designer. She is technically. She's a world-class costume designer. She has put clothes. She has touched the following men. Gary Oldman. Fair?
Fair.
Yeah. Joe Rogan style. You've touched Gary Oldman. She's touched Clayne Crawford. She's touched Ethan Embry. She's touched Steven Seagal, unfortunately. She's touched. What are some other dudes?
Michael
T. Williamson. Tim Meadows.
Oh, Neil Flynn.
Neil Flynn, the janitor from Scrubs. So she worked in the costume on a bunch of different movies. Some mine, some not mine. I've never worked with Gary Oldman directly. Anyway, I wanted to bring her in and have the business means something else. That is correct, especially when you have your wife on the show. So welcome my wife, to the first time she's ever been on Craft Show. Long time listener, first time caller. Is that fair?
Fair.
Okay.
Coast to coast, I am.
Yeah, that's a little coast to coast thing. We used to listen to. She never listened to Coast to Coast until she met me, and we were stuck living on Dolphin Island, and we would drive back and forth from Dolphin Island. It's like a 45-minute drive. It'd be late at night, pre-kids, and we'd be driving home from going out to dinner or whatever the heck we had been doing, and we're listening to Coast to Coast, and I'm playing her all the old episodes. If you guys have never heard Coast to Coast, by the way, you can find some of it on YouTube. It's kind of harder, but you got to go find the Art Bell stuff when he talks to the time traveler. You got to find it when he talks to the guy from Area 51 was the best. And we listened to those episodes, and she already has large eyes, but she got the really big squirrel eyes. And then we found out that whole thing was fake. But it's fun to listen to either way. It's great content. So let me start you off with the first question, and you can just talk to me. Just pretend like they're not there. They can see your face. It's lovely. So we met and we dated for a period of time. But did you in your life, and there's this concept that I hear a lot, us having two daughters, that little girls dream about their wedding and what their life might be afterwards. Did you ever think you'd end up running away and joining the circus of filmmaking and video production nightmares?
Never in a million years. Never.
Are you gonna if you're gonna talk low? It's not a
I
dong.
don't,
You'll be all right.
don't like it in my face.
That's what she said. Huh? Huh? I can do it in real time. Anyway, so can you set that stage up a little bit? Like just overall, what is it like being the wife or being the partner? Wife's not even necessarily the word I wanted to use, but being the partner in a relationship in terms of, and you can talk about filmmaking if you want to think about it and how we approach things from filmmaking to this. I mean, what is that? What was that like? I don't even know. I'm curious to see what you're going to say. How honest you're going to be would be great. I don't know. Maybe you need to be 4 drinks in before I get the real truth. But
It was a big transition
yeah.
from just having a normal life, normal jobs, normal
Well, what do you mean?
to
What do you mean by normal?
normal being I had a 9 to 5. Not a normal 9 to 5. I was a nanny. So that was bizarre in itself. But then transitioning into realizing that jobs aren't forever in the film industry and having to pick up and move twice and just realizing that creatives don't think like normal people, especially in that realm, and they don't communicate like the normal people.
I mean, so let me unpack that for a second. What say what you got to say. You're not gonna. I mean, it's just us and the internet.
Oh
But I
no,
mean, what is it?
there's
But,
nothing.
I know, but what does that mean? Like, because think of it this way: like this conversation could be the the impetus to help somebody get through it, or maybe somebody's trying to launch their career, or maybe they're in their career. And I will say, from my perspective, I can see the posters of Sons of Liberty, and I remember that movie when I had to go to LA for a period of time, and you were pregnant with Finley, was not necessarily, and I don't think that was all like you being mean. I think some of that was hormone based from babies or the baby, but like that was rough.
But that was also like 2 to 3 weeks out. So for you having to be gone and knowing I could go into labor, I never had a child before. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was for a week in a hotel room with your mom in Atlanta. That was a random thing that kind of set me off as
Fair enough. I
well.
mean,
But just knowing that you have to be gone and you have to be gone. But it took me, what do you think? Probably until you started craft show to know that you're doing this to provide for a family. You're not trying to just this is not your escape. Which you do have your escape within the film business. You do these as an escape.
yeah.
You but not in a bad way, not escaping from us, but it's just your creative outlet. But we can't I it took me a long time to realize that you're not trying to leave to get away from me. You are more need to finish a project.
Well, part of it is that I think in some cases, and I think you understood it very well. I remember there's an episode of a TV show called The Unit that was about like special forces, and it was interesting because TV, I mean, network TV is garbage most of the time, but there was a great moment in there where you have these soldiers. Not comparing myself or anything I do, I am not saying that, but there's this great dialogue between the wives, and it's like, look, he's going to do this no matter what,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to go after this because that's how he's driven. It's about a soldier going back to war or something, but he's going to go after it because that's all he knows and that's who he is. And I remember us watching that together, and we had a moment over it. Like it was like a real moment because it was like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I feel. Not again, not making light of anything military, but the truth is, I can't stop. Now, I can't get it out of me. I've tried. I've had regular jobs. Quick question: how many times have I been fired?
I mean, like since we've been together, I mean,
Yes,
two major firings,
two,
two major ones.
two. But life. But I mean,
Like up and moved cross country twice, halfway cross country.
yeah, it happens.
And that's fine. And we're still here.
Yeah, no, look, we thrive. I guess that's part of the conversation I wanted to have about it is like, you know, people don't often consider that um, because the way that I do things, it wasn't that I was trying to get fired. I wasn't not trying to screw over our family. I was thinking about our family, maybe too much about our family. I know you know that, but I'm just saying, like in general, it wasn't like I was neglecting it. And there's days that I wish I could just have a regular 9 to 5. Like I wish I could clock in, clock out, but it's never going to happen. Like it's just not. It's not who I am. My DNA does not allow me to do such
Hmm.
things. And so I just, what is that? What do you? like, how did you find a way to adjust? Like, what was that? Because I think most of this channel is dudes.
That's
Let's
fine.
just be honest. I mean, the bias is most of it's guys, and and I'm sure they all have partners of some capacity. But what is it? What is it like from your perspective? Like, how do you get to the point? Because as men, we probably just like, you know, shut the f up, toughen up, deal with it. But that's not always the case. Of, I mean, you're not necessarily processing. I mean, how did you end up dealing with that? Certainly, once we had kids involved. I mean, a kid, because we have to kind of specify the second one, though we love her dearly, was not necessarily in the game plan. She was not on the call sheet.
She was not on the
She was random background that made it into the movie.
It took me a long time to realize that this there's nothing I can do or say to change someone with a passion, because I am a self-professed passionless person. I am, you know that.
Yeah.
And how do you say don't don't do that? Don't reach for your dreams. Don't. It took me a very long time. I tried to mold you. I tried to fix you, quote, but it doesn't work that way. I'm the one who's got the issues not knowing what direction I want to go in. So you knew that, and all you wanted to do, it goes even back to hunter gatherer. You were trying to provide for the family. That's all you wanted to do, but you wanted to do it in your terms, not anyone else's terms.
And I think that's one of the challenges that a lot of like YouTubers and content creators and other people face, is that they have that same drive of wanting to do it. They have this belief system. They want to do it on their terms. And sometimes they don't get the support. I was very lucky, but they don't get the support, or they haven't instilled that support, meaning they haven't proven that level of it. I just think it's an interesting side of things where, like, there are people in this chat, like, I know, that are dedicated filmmakers that are extremely talented, but just maybe haven't pushed over the line. I'm not saying quit your day job and do that, but I mean, if we consider the amount of sacrifice that we still have, like, owning a business is a sacrifice. And I think people don't really, I mean, we talk, so let me say it this way. We talk about sacrifice. You made a huge shift. So you had been, because we had young children for the most part, you'd been freelancing after a period of time. And I'll go back to your career side. Everyone wants to know how you touched Gary Oldman, but certainly I do. but like, going back to the, so right at the pandemic, we don't know what's going to happen in the industry, and everything changes, and you like make a pretty big, I mean,
Pretty big.
so what happens in that? What happened there?
I feel like roles switched because owning a small business, you don't know. I had no clue, and we have a lifestyle that we maintain, and who wants to have to backpedal on that? So I chose to go into a more of a humble career than I had been accustomed to. And
Because what is your degree in
my
that?
degree is in history. We're gonna leave it that. And I didn't want to teach. I did not want to pursue. I mean, granted, that stuff has helped me tremendously in my costume career path, but other than that, it hasn't really done much for me. So I don't have anything to fall back on. And so I chose to take a job in retail in essential needs in during the pandemic, and I'm still there.
Yeah, but I mean, in fairness, you're a manager. I guess my thing is why did you do that? Because I remember, um, and this isn't, we've talked about this, so this is not a zing at all. But I remember we didn't actually have a conversation about that. You just up and did it.
Well, no, you were like, you need a job, you need a job, you need
Well,
a
yeah,
job.
that was
That was the
prior to the
conversation.
pandemic, though. That was
That was
prior.
the conversation. But I
That's
mean,
pre-pandemic. You needed a job.
but for me, I wanted to maintain the continuity of our life, our livelihood, everything. And not that that was offering those benefits at the time, but I was doing my part. I felt like I was helping you so you didn't feel as stressed, not knowing what the future, the next few months would hold. And it it worked out. And but I do what I got to do.
No, I get it. When you, let's circle back to the career side. So in transparency, your goal, you were never really interested in being a costumer. That was
Oh,
not only the film side, but you didn't really have any interest in the costume whatsoever.
not at all.
Um, And what I remember is that at first you started working on, because you worked she's an excellent pastry chef. She could have gone. We do say not a regret, but we do talk about we should have probably sent you to culinary school. Like we would have done okay.
Well, no, I had applied before, like the week before we met.
Oh, well, I ruined that part of her life. Hi, folks. I'm the ruiner of
No,
lives, Gary. Um, so so we end up doing. We were in Missouri after I'd been fired. Right after we got married, I got, of course, I got fired. We moved to Missouri, and
misery for me, not for you.
yeah, that's true. And then I ended up working for this small ad agency, and this agency somehow we had a connection to a movie, and you'd been working in a restaurant. You're like the pastry chef of this restaurant or whatever, and we were working there. And then you ended up working on, and I don't even know if you know this about it, but you ended up working on a movie with Amy Simons.
Yeah,
It was called You're Next.
you're next.
It's called You're Next, but you were their craft services and catering. Is that
Mm-hmm.
but
And
that go ahead, can
no,
you
I
talk
mean,
about that at all?
no, I would do that. I was a nanny at the time,
Yeah.
and so I would do that at night. I'd do my 9 to 5 with my nanny kids, and then I would come home, prep for that, and they would have a night shoot, so I would be able to bring in warm food. So it all worked out, and I was like, oh, I could do this. Living off Red Bull and
Pre-kids.
peanut butter M&Ms. Let's go.
Yeah. Facts. The funny thing is that director was, so I knew the writer of that movie. His name was Simon Barrett.
Yeah.
I had worked with him early in my career. He was the writer of these two movies shot in Alabama, in Mobile, with Scott Lumpkin at the time, who becomes important in our lives forever. But I met them, and so working with them, it was crazy to meet Simon again. Essentially, he did this movie called Dead Birds, and he wrote a movie called Frankenfish. First HD feature for the tech nerds that are listening. It was filmed by Elliot Rocket. It was one of the first films I got to cut it. I do have an editor credit, but it was one of the first films shot on the Sony 950s back in the day. Not even the Fs, the 950s. This is the 99-ish era. So Lucas, or pre 99, whatever. Lucasfilm had not put out their version of the Sony 950. Anyway, that guy Adam Wingard is now who directs all of the Godzilla movies.
Oh,
Like the
what?
big, yeah, he's
Huh?
gone, and now he has a huge movie. I can't remember what it is. Somebody said the other day, but now he has it, and he has a huge movie.
Good for him.
Yeah, and Amy Simons has gone on to be like, she was in Prometheus. I mean, she's been in lots of stuff. When I see her, I just remember her just being this mousy
In Columbia, Missouri.
in Columbia,
Who would have
Missouri.
thought?
So then we go from that, and there's some other projects that come along. I can't remember what it was. Was it Virgin Mattress that started the wardrobe stuff?
No, I feel like the Virgin Mattress point 2.0.
You didn't do the first one, right? Because that was Laney and
Yes.
that guy. Very talented photographer. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Okay, so you did the second one. So basically, your step into it is so you guys know this is pre long form content being like monetized and backed by companies. So we got hired, or the agency I worked for at the time got hired to produce a video, or they wanted us to make some kind of content at the time, that had to do with bed springs. So this company does not make mattresses. This is not a Purple commercial. They make bed springs. They literally make the springs inside of the bed that Serta or somebody else might use. And so the brilliant pitch that I had is I remember when we got married, she made me throw away my mattress because, quote her words, I don't want to marinate in somebody else's business, or something to that effect. And that line has never left me. That's the part of why I think conversations are important, because maybe you have that you can reach back to. That line sat with me, and I pitched that it was going to be the story about a couple trying to find a mattress because he was about to get married, and quote, she didn't want to marinate in herbs and spices or whatever. It was very disgusting. They bought it and they took it, but it was so offensive and so hilarious, and people absolutely loved it that watched it, the first iteration of it. But then they went and showed it, and I don't think I've ever told the story, but when they showed this, they were an extremely conservative Christian company,
Yes.
and it was called the Virgin Mattress. They show it, and the room goes dead quiet, and they are just like, the two account guys, they thought it was brilliant. The room goes dead quiet, and it was not a good, from recollection. I was not there, but what I was told, not a good situation. So then they come back and they're like, hey, we want to do it again because we love the idea, because it was a way to show springs. It was different. And YouTube at the time this is early YouTube. I mean, early. And so it was just a way to kind of quote pre-viral sort of vibe. And so then these guys come back and they want to do it again. And this time when we do it, it's 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 toned down. It's a mattress store. We had wardrobe. And so at that point we went from being just like hipsters, because the first one was like hipsters, and the second one had to be much more contained and with wardrobe. And there was a LARPing joke, and there was all this other stuff that had wardrobe sight gags and all this. At which point I engaged her to become the wardrobe person. Do you remember much? Like, what was that? Like, all of a sudden here I am to my wife, like, hey, come do wardrobe on this. I don't, let's
It's gonna
go.
be for free. You're gonna be for free. It's gonna be
You have
fine.
worked for free a lot.
Yeah, but also you're doing crafty and catering. So
Oh, did you do all of them?
yes, I did all of that.
Oh,
Remember
dear
the time I
Lord.
burned my chest on the macaroni pot? Remember that out there? You don't remember that? It
No.
was horrible. It was just before the wrap party too. I mean, it's like the last
That's the worst.
It was horrible. It was nasty. It was
What were you making? Like mac and
I
cheese?
guess for crafty. I mean for catering, and then I turned the pot up and it burned the shit out of my chest. And I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
anyway, I digress. The so I was still nannying full time at that time, and I would have kids in tow dropping off all this stuff, just dropping it off, and having notes attached, safety pin in it, not knowing how this process worked at all, like at all, and having to have this is for this.
Did you even have an assistant on that? You didn't have an
No,
assistant?
I had two the hair people,
Yep.
because remember they
And one of them was Heather, though.
one was Heather, but the other one was that one that braided in these black extensions in my brown hair
Oh, yeah.
to test it. What was her name? I don't remember her
I don't
name, but
remember either.
she she helped. They all like it was like a whole
Yeah.
family.
It was a little tribe thing.
Yes. And I would have racks and be like, okay, I'm trusting you with this. This for this scene and this and this. They got to go back to this. We it was a whole. I didn't realize how in depth that was, but I just remember going back to the house with the kids for nap time, going, oh my gosh, I don't, I hope they did it right.
Yeah, so it that kicks everything off of here. You have this my wife. I literally was like, hey, you're gonna go do 12 things. Luckily, we didn't have kids, but you're gonna do these 12 things plus raise someone else's children, and get paid for it, and then do hair, do wardrobe, and then craft service and catering. And it's like, really, that was like the impetus of craft show in some ways. In fact, that the name came from up there, and it was called craft back then. But like the idea was that we were going to, like, that's family show. We still operate family show most of the time. We're scrappy operation. Like, we don't necessarily like have all the money in the world to make things happen. But we did, and we figure it out. So we go through and you do that. And then fast forward a little bit, I get fired again, moved us across the country, get fired again, move us back across the country for another round back down to South Alabama, where we lived in my parents' vacation home. I've told this story before where, and listen, I just want you guys and all to know the struggle's real. You're working at a restaurant in Mobile, which is the coast to coast. The reason why we were doing coast to coast, we would listen to that show driving back and forth. The only job I could get, because there was no film work, was working for a place that made commercials for $250. The guy I worked with, shout out to Dusty Bias. I know he's not watching this, but if you've never seen his movies, they are absolutely bananas. This guy had won or had some huge accolade at Sundance and was working with me at this little tiny production company that literally, I mean, we made commercials for $250. He would go out and he would just shoot. You're supposed to shoot these commercials in like 3 hours. He would go out and spend like 6-7 hours. I mean, it was ridiculous. And they would come back, and all we would do is laugh the entire time. Like, it was such a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it was great. I also made some incredible contacts in Missouri too, like Mr. Pickles, and shout out to him. But there's people that are still in my life from up there. So it never takes away all production based type stuff. And some of those people are gone from our lives, but some of them still stick around. Anyway, so I'm doing that. She's doing that. And then eventually we get a phone call to do a movie. Did you do wardrobe on that movie? Did you do wardrobe on Counterclockwise, the film that no one has ever seen? You
No,
can
I
see the
did
trailer on
craft.
IMDb. It is horrifically bad. I did not direct that, though.
I did crafty on that. Because I still had that full time
Oh, right.
baker job. I
Right.
was managing the bakery slash gelatery,
Yeah,
whatever you call it.
Yeah, I don't know.
And that was just my danger job. We've got to survive job.
Yeah.
Like, that was horrible. But I did crafty on the side for that,
Okay.
and because I worked early morning, so I was able to transition in fairly easily.
Well,
Like if
that
you
production schedule is not brutal.
no,
You
it
remember
was
we shot
old
like 3 to
man
4 hours.
Rivers.
It was like 3 to 4 hours a day,
Let's
and
have some fancy catering.
it was like, oh god, it was way out of control. The catering was like real high end. I mean, it was nuts. But that was their thing.
Still a blessing.
It was great. It was, hey, I'm never going to complain about it. So basically we do that. And so what happens from that film, from one of the individuals that let me go, but that film ended up, or his company did, fired me, that moved me to Missouri, moved me back, hires me when I get back to shoot that. And then he basically said, hey, I don't want to do that part, but I want to keep making movies. I want you to direct them. So that's the story of how I did it. At that point, I went ahead and brought Sarah on, and Sarah ended up becoming wardrobe for all of my films. And so that was Skyhook, terrible movie. Wardrobe's great though. Skyhook's bad. Is one of them. Phoenix Rises. I went way off the rails on that movie. Sons of Liberty, crazy action movie. Probably one of the most complex costume projects we've done. I think Ether's harder.
Well, yeah, that
Yeah.
was different
Right.
situation.
And then we did Convergence together. We did Sasquatch together. So she was always my costumer. And then we had a child in between Convergence and Sasquatch. No, we had the child right after Sons of Liberty. Oh yeah, rap gift. Um,
We found out at the rap.
at the rap party. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, we ended up doing 5 features together, and then we did Ether, which is the biggest failure I've talked about it before, but $250,000 failure that I did. But it was worth the risk. It's great looking stuff. Love it. And that was a steampunk inspired science fiction piece that was massive, huge scale of people. I mean, it was for 11 minutes or 7 minutes. I can't remember now, but it's very short, and it was very expensive, and it was very high end to
Very
pull that
hard.
off. It was hard because I mean, yeah. Why was it so difficult?
I mean, that many people with me and 2 costumers was a lot. That was a lot.
Yeah, there was 50 to 60 extras a day that all had to look unique as part of what the mandate was aesthetically between me and Horst. It was a lot. It was a lot of stuff. But after that, you kept working in the business, and so that's the ones like I can talk about my movies in my time because those experiences. I will say this: what was it? What I remember us having a couple of fights on set, but it was never me fighting my wife. It was me fighting the costume. Oh, go ahead. Look at the face. Go ahead. What you got?
I can remember a whole bunch of them.
Oh, I can't remember, but
About
two.
yeah, 2 what Convergence and Sasquatch.
Yep.
Those 2.
Yeah.
Those were bad.
They
Those
were
were
bad
bad.
to me.
Well, everybody else thought they were bad.
Well, they thought I was just gonna hold you on. Everybody was equal.
And then that's fine. I appreciate that, but bro, I didn't hear you yell at anybody else like that.
I did, but you weren't there. You were doing your job, and you were in the trailer.
I don't know. That was rough. Just because we had 1 boot, not 2. He was polishing a boot. 1 boot. No, I need 2. I need 2 boots.
I don't remember which one
That
was
was
it.
the Tim Meadows. That was the Tim Meadows
Oh,
one.
Tim Meadows with the boot. The one I remember from that was actually where Christine Bentley. I don't know what her name is now. She changed her name, didn't she? She's on that show. She's on some Netflix show.
Sunset. Is that real estate show?
Yeah, real
Sunset.
estate show on Netflix. The blonde chick,
Well,
Christine.
there's several. There's
Oh,
several ones.
sorry, I never watched it, but whatever. Her name's Christine something now. But Christine, she showed up and I lost it, and I don't yell down, so I couldn't yell at Rachel, so I had to yell at you. But she showed up, and the bandage we shot the entire sequence
Oh,
was
the
on the
wrong
wrong leg,
leg.
and it was like a huge bit. And I was so focused on trying to get because there was so many sight gags in that movie that then all of a sudden for it to turn around and be on the wrong leg when I was upset and then I had to reshoot it and whatever. I ended up having to cut that scene from the movie because I just couldn't fix it.
Well, I don't
Yeah.
remember that one because you know what? I wasn't there for the yelling. I
No,
was
correct.
probably on the walkie for the yelling, and
You
I was
were
like
100% with our child
turning that off.
because she was like that little that you had to go like tend to her or whatever.
No,
Yeah.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah, that's the one I remember. I don't remember any of them on Convergence.
Oh no. Oh gosh. How about Chelsea's dress being wrinkled in the front because she sat down before,
Oh,
and
yeah,
that
that
has
was.
nothing to do with me. I mean,
But you got to fix it.
well, I fixed it. What else? The dress. Oh god, there was so much on that one. I got yelled at. What were we?
Maybe
Somewhere,
someone with the hat.
probably, but there was something else not to do with her. Something else because it was dark. I was trying to leave. I was trying so hard to leave, and you were just like, and Rachel was like, "I'm gonna punch him in the face. I'm gonna punch him in the face." Because Casey Myers was there that day too.
Oh, so it was on the back. It was the nighttime shoots.
Yeah, it was.
Maybe Casey remembers. Casey might know what it was. All right. Anyway, so you do those movies. We've only had a couple of spats on those, or in my recollection. So I apologize publicly if I hurt your feelings. I was,
I feel like that's water under the bridge.
yeah. I mean, it's at this point, it's years later. But then you go do some other stuff, and some of these were like low budget things. So what is it? So in fairness, you got hired of your own merit outside of me. So yes, I hired her in the beginning. Which, if you have a partner, you've probably put your partner to work. I know for a fact I have a dear friend named Israel, and there's this great behind the scenes video. I hope he lets me post it one day. And it's him, and he's filming this insane samurai movie. And I mean, he's very animated anyway. He's filming this movie, and then something happens where he moves over the frame or gets wherever, and there's his wife standing behind the camera, slapping bugs on her leg. And the whole time, this whole movie is shot like he sets up the camera, she just pushes record, and it's so well made for this little indie samurai film shot on GH5s. Like the guy just absolutely amazing work, but it's just her slapping bugs the entire time. One point he jumps off a rock and he's like supposed to stab the sword into the rock. It's paper mache. And he does it, but the sword breaks off and he doesn't realize it. So he's like acting like he's doing some kind of samurai thing. And you just hear her in the background. She's like, and she's from Mexico and he's Cuban. So it's in Spanish, but you can hear her be like, basically, she says, "You lost your stick," or something like that. And then he realizes, I mean, it's just the realest thing in the world when you work with your partner or whatever. But at the same time, you did go off and have your own career. And one of those things was you worked on, and I don't know how much we're allowed to say, but I will say you worked on a movie with Steven Seagal where he was a total, I'm going to say it, shitbag, and was not appropriate in a lot of circumstances. I have no evidence to prove that. That's just hearsay, but that comes from a lot of people. You may have a different experience with it, but you go work on these other things. What was it? What was it like when you started work? You did Vice too. Did you do Vice? Bruce Willis? No, you did another movie. You did that crazy Nick Cage movie.
And then I quit and went to marry.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay. But you did do the Steven Seagal movie.
Oh, yeah, the Steven Seagal movie is when you went to South Korea.
Right.
I just found out when I was pregnant. It was like, I'm still
baby number 2.
Like, what the hell?
Right.
And yes, I need something to get my mind off of everything. And he was just a sleazebag. Not to me, personally, but if you're a woman, you never want another woman treated like this man treated other women. Right. And I don't know, like you said, I don't know how far we can go with that conversation, but it was the most inappropriate. Not only was it him. Remember? What was his name?
Luke Evans.
No,
he got fired. Johnny Mesner.
No, Luke Evans turned it down because he was going to Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, Johnny Mesner. Yeah, and that guy was struggling with some alcohol addiction.
Yeah, he was having
or something. He was struggling with something. I speculation on what it was, but he was going through something because he was nuts. Like again, hearsay for me. So very I'm not saying guy. I'm sure he's a great human being. I'm not saying anything ill. He was just going through a period that was rough.
But we all know that there's etiquette with weapons on set.
Right.
But there's also etiquette with the cast on set. Like Steven Seagal just never. I guess he thinks he's too big for his britches or whatever, but could just make any woman feel cringy.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And then the women he brought in, because some were not good enough for him in his role, and he had demands that were, I felt, inappropriate. Not even being a feminist, just being a woman. No one on that set felt comfortable with him there. And that's probably all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, we're not putting any kind of negative.
He could have changed. He could have found the Lord.
Look, I hope he's doing great. I hope
Maybe
he's having.
He's a sheriff in New Orleans. I don't know.
He was trying at one point. So, but one of those we talked about, you worked on, and I don't know what we can talk about. I don't think that movie ever came out. You jumped ship after that film later on down the road. You started on Vice, and then you jumped ship to that to go to work on this crazy Nick Cage movie,
No, what was it called? What was it called? Worlds,
Worlds
Beyond Worlds, something.
Beyond World. But I don't
I
think
think
it
the
ever came
name
out.
changed. I think it did. But I mean, I got called all the time to day play. I just had a kid and I couldn't just go jump and work a 20-hour day, is
Yeah,
what they were pretty much asking
yeah, they
for.
were grinders for sure.
I mean, the Battleship movie, the movie on the Battleship.
USS Indianapolis.
I mean, I would have loved to have done that because that story is close to my heart, being my degree in history is closer to World War II. And I've loved to have done that, but it was, I think that one I was like super pregnant during that
Hmm.
too. Um, but where were we going with that?
I don't know. You were talking about you jump shipped over to the
Oh,
Beyond
to the
World.
Nick Cage. When we went to the Nick Cage movie.
I forgot you. You did you dress him?
Yeah, I got plenty of stories about that one. I don't know if anybody wants to hear that one.
I thought he was a pleasant guy. Was he not pleasant?
Um, to some,
Yeah.
to not, to some. I was the costume supervisor, so I didn't have to deal with him directly. Like the people on set, my set dressers would, my set costumers would. They're the ones who had to. Hey, we need to put this watch on you, or hey, we need to
Could
this
you
jacket.
real quick? Could you explain the? I just flipped the cameras the wrong way. Could you explain the hierarchy of the how that works? You have wardrobe, costume, supervisor, that whole process. Because I think probably some people don't probably know that.
Um, well, as a designer, that's your department head. Then you go to costume supervisor, and then you go to um the set the set what's it called? No, I'm like
On set, I would
yeah, on
assume.
set. There we go. Or on set, and that's basically how it is. There's little other pieces filled in, but I've never worked on a giant movie, so it's not. That's basically what I had. But I would have a couple people on set. My costume supervisor was like my right hand man, and they would train. They would put. We had a binder, which was our holy bible of costume, to make sure our continuity was correct every single day, and that's my person who would do that. I would leave set to go make sure. Okay, for tomorrow, we make sure we have every little bit for tomorrow, or the next couple of days, while they kind of manned the ship while I was gone. So it was kind of like my little assistant manager. And but she or they took the notes, they put it in our book, and would make sure everyone knew what was what, made sure laundry was done, made sure tags were hung so we knew this costume went with this scene. They were the mechanics that ran the whole ship. I was the one who just created the look, created color palettes, created worked with the art department, make sure our colors matched. Um, so that's basically how it is. The on-set people made sure that if they're sweaty in here, they're going to be sweaty in the next scene or the next congruent scene. Make sure did they kept the continuity continuous.
Right.
So
Did but was it so that was like but Nick Cage was I mean because again Steven Seagal had I we can't go into long because it does get into some weird conversations but Nick Cage was your first. Let me backtrack. Ask this question: how many of the actors had you dealt with, or have you dealt with, where they have specific wardrobe demands? Like how much of that wardrobe that they wear is the costume designer, and how much of it is something that they've influenced? How far down the road does that go? Like I just remember that Michael T. Williamson, Bubba Gump, if you don't know who he is, fantastic actor, lovely human being, great director too. Michael T, if I remember correctly, his whole thing was he wanted comfy shoes, or was
he
that
wanted
James Black?
nope, he wanted
Yeah,
comfy shoes because shoes were, if he was thinking about his feet, he could not think about what else he was doing. He could not think about his work. He could not think about anything else. And he had very wide feet. And so he just, so I made that happen. But then I remember shot the shoots for that, was it Butterfly? What was that movie called? It was a Scott
oh
Lanka
yeah,
movie.
yeah,
It was Kate
and it was what's his name?
Boswick
Yep,
and Jane Thomas
Thomas
Jane,
Jane. But
which
they
he's been in Mobile several times. But and I'd heard story. He refused to come back for reshoots. Reshoots, that's what it was.
yep.
And he refused to come back. But I had notes on all of his stuff that shoes are cages for his feet. and he refuses to wear shoes. So he gets shot from the mid calf up all the time. So I know because wasn't he on the Indianapolis movie?
Yep.
No feet. He refuses to wear shoes.
That's kind of funny because he played the Punisher. I wonder if he
Oh,
had shoes on as the Punisher.
yeah, that's about or Mickey Mantle.
Yeah, well, that's what you know from
Yeah,
42 or whatever it was.
yeah.
All right. So what about like then you get into did you get into wacky stuff like Nick Cage? Because that movie, whatever Beyond Worlds or whatever it's called,
Yeah, something like that.
it's
Is
something
it?
like that. It,
Well,
it
it
was a
was.
wacky movie. I just remember hearing stories from the production designer about Nick Cage reading a book about Nick Cage. Like there's weird stuff in that movie.
I don't. Well, I know going back to Steven Seagal, his kimonos because he had to wear kimonos.
That's
Um,
just the best thing ever.
they had to be 100% pure silk because otherwise it's not called a kimono. It's garbage. Um, his everything he had to feel every little thing. But when we were on the phone, when Luke Evans was going to be in the Beyond Worlds or whatever,
No, it was
nope,
Perfect Weapon.
that was the same movie. Yeah, Perfect Weapon. He had to have everything was 100% cotton, and his monogram had to be his initials had to be monogrammed in every little thing. His boots had to be leather. Everything had to be 100%.
Top tier.
Huh.
So what was it like then when you go deal with somebody like notoriously, Nick Cage does character stuff, but nobody does character stuff more than Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman has never played the same character. He has constantly changed it. It comes down to it. Say with what's within safe reasons. But like you literally that, and we know that movie's not great. We don't have to. I don't even know if it ever came out. I think it did.
So it did. It did. It was on.
All
It
right,
was on Netflix or something.
but that was like you're stepping into. At the time, he was up for an Oscar,
Yes,
and
for
he ends for Churchill,
yes,
and he ends up winning an Oscar during the filming of that movie, which
it's
is wild. I mean, this is
wild.
like that movie. What is that? Not A Mighty Wind, but that not Best in Show.
Oh,
Same guy. Those guys made a movie about Home for Purim, I think it's called, where they're shooting a movie and Oscar buzz starts. But this really happened. But he was very particular. Wasn't he particular about his wardrobe scenario?
his wife was.
Well, I think sure.
No, he spoke through his wife. So I dealt with that scenario. He had to have certain socks. His socks had to be crew socks. They had to be a certain kind of crew socks. He refused to go barefoot on a boat because he would never be barefoot on a boat. He would. I mean, it was a sailboat. He needed Sperry topsiders at all times. Um, what else did he have?
Because didn't he change? Did he change his wardrobe? Did he come back and say like give notes on like I'm not wearing this?
Well, colors of his t-shirts because we kind of just went with the t-shirt because these people. The premise of this movie was they were their marriage was struggling. He had gotten let go from a job, and he was like, "We're going to put our savings into this boat. We're going to live on this boat, and we're going to charter this boat." Is what it was, a sailing charter. And so they're humble people. They're trying to rehab this boat. So he's not dressed fancy, but so he was in t-shirts and shorts, but they had to be a certain length. The shirts had to be of a certain caliber. And we live in Mobile, Alabama. This stuff is not super accessible. I mean, aside from ordering it, but he would want it the day of. And granted, there were raining scenes, and the wetsuits were just like a huge thing because he was in shorts and a t-shirt. And what is a half wetsuit's not going to do a ton for you for the but our weather changed in Mobile. Our weather changes all the time, so we went from summer to a hurricane to freezing cold, and of course that was the water scenes. And he needed hot water.
Oh yeah, the diving type suit.
Well, I had these packs for divers to put in his suit to keep him warm, but that wasn't enough. But the water bottles, the old fashioned
Oh
heat
yeah.
and pad water bottles, he needed those. I'm an old man. That's what he kept saying. I'm an old man.
But he was mostly when I met him, he was very pleasant and I got to interview him and it was I mean, I got to interview Gary Oldman and it was fantastic and it was a unique experience, but he was very nice. I won't talk about there's a portion of that story. Sometime if you ask me offline or I've had enough drinks, I'll tell you the other part of it. It's nothing to zing on him. It just was a revelation about him I didn't know. But he was very pleasant. I guess where I'm going with all this, the reason I wanted to kind of get that backstory is that even though you were kind of thrown into this world. You ended up having your own career. So, and this isn't a tee up on that, but do you ever, now where you are in life, sort of where we are, I struggle sometimes missing film. Do you miss that stuff?
Every single day. I'm like, where's the life? Like everything changed. And I could work a 36-hour day and be dead ass tired and get up and let's go. Let's go. Give me my Red Bull. Give me coffee, Red Bull.
Do you think though that some of that comes from the fact that, like, so you started this conversation, interestingly enough, saying that there's a weird part in me that I can't turn that part off. And so I drug you into it. But do you think maybe the reality of it is we all have that weird part, but all that happened is you unlocked your own. You finally, like, you were forced to, and it forces you into that boat. I mean, life changes and things go different directions, but like, I think it's important to say that, like, a lot of times people get stuck that they just can't do it. They'll never get there. They don't have that. And the reality of it is you just haven't found the right combination of keys. For you, it ends up being to have that same sort of drive. It ends up being like marrying this crazy dude that gets fired all the time, but has good ideas sometimes.
Sometimes.
Right. Thank you. But I mean, do you feel like that maybe that's the reality of it?
Well, my mom always said, I mean, growing up, she always, and I have always been super creative. Um, it may not be anything amazing, but right now my drive is making costumes for my kids for all the crazy things they do. But that's all I have in the costume world anymore because you don't have a lot for me in craft show anymore.
Yeah.
But I also work like a bazillion hours a week and then have because but yes, I if I hadn't had that the catalyst of you saying, okay, so I need you to do this a favor. It's a favor.
Right.
I'm not gonna ask this all the time. And then it turning into a very lucrative, exciting, adrenaline. I mean, made good friends because you're in the trenches and it's like a restaurant. You're in the weeds and you all help each other and it's a camaraderie and this family that you don't have in many other careers in any other job sets. You may have people you depend on, but not like a crew of 50 who, be it crafty, be it the first AD that can drive you fucking insane, but he's got your back.
Right.
I mean, you don't have that in many other jobs. That these people were all working for a common goal. Nobody's trying to undermine anyone. Nobody's trying to get ahead. Maybe you are in your department, but screw the you're not gonna screw the movie just to get ahead.
Right.
So typically, so I mean, it was just. I mean, I'm still friends with my costumers I had. I'm still friends with any other department, hair, makeup. We all work so closely. Art department, I'm not as I don't talk to them as much, but you know what? We could still get back together and work cohesively at any time.
Yeah. I mean, I tell everybody all the time, like, you walk away from those and you don't know where some of their journeys are going to go, where they're going to end up. One of them, I mean, shout out to her because she crushed it. It's Ignacia, and she started with us. She started as hair and makeup and worked her way up, and she is key makeup on the bear, which I think is one of the best. And it's her tattoo work. Like, she totally, like, shout out to her for doing it. But it's just one of those things of, like, you don't know where these things are going to go. So it's not like you're going to parlay and I'm going to ride on her coattails. I get more excited saying, like, I was there when she got started. The same way with I see folks in this channel or through our history of stuff. I think, go ahead. Can you turn the air on when you go? Just like turn it down. I don't know what you say, but I say turn it down. Like, I want it colder. Okay. I don't think that's true. She says something else at home, folks. But anyway, so seeing her kind of thrive on that side while she's taking a whiz, let's talk real quick. Obviously, most people come to this channel because, or we got our start on this channel from the GH5, and we're currently on two GH5s. GH5S is her empty seat. Excuse me. And then I'm on GH5. Anyway, if you've not looked at the GH7, there's lots of new data out now. Jeff and I had a great conversation about it. That camera's pretty interesting. And I saw an interview with Matt Frazier on News Shooter, I believe it was, and he explained the RE log scenario, which is cool. So I think they're going to be able to contain the data rate. That's what I was most curious about, how that was going to work. So it's not full RE log, it's a custom license in Vlog. So you're shooting in Vlog, but it is a custom log license. So you're not going to get the highlight roll off of RE, but you are going to be able to get the color range from it. So it's interesting. And then he brought up something that I didn't realize. Worley, Jeff the Beard, Dr. Beard Fosse, whatever name you want to give him, has had me doing the same thing for a long time. When we started working in log, we work in log the entire way. Like we cut and log, we shoot and log, we shoot and log. We might monitor a little bit, but we shoot and log, then we cut and log, and we deliver once it's graded. And the reason I bring that up is I just thought it was interesting. Matt was referring to it in a way that people aren't doing that. So I'm kind of curious, what are you doing? How are you shooting? Are you shooting in log? Are you shooting in log and applying a LUT? Are you shooting in log, applying a LUT, grading that LUT? Like, what is your process on that side of it? Because I thought it was interesting. I will say, from a business perspective, I think it's much more economical to shoot in log, monitor in log on set, but apply no LUT because you don't want to get stuck with it, and then send it to your colors after your edit. I still think that's the fastest and best way. The reason why I say that is because at the end of the day, you're not stuck with anything baked in. And yes, you can undo a LUT in some cases, but it just seems like the log to log workflow is a much more efficient model than necessarily the other way. I was just curious. You guys are welcome to throw that down in the chat. Also, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. I'm going to ask her a couple more and we'll chat a little bit longer. I got a little bit of beer left and some whiskey, so we'll see how that goes. So let me ask another one on this side, back to you on this. What would you say to anybody's partner out there that's in the position of like where you were? I wouldn't say right when we got married, because I still had a stable job. It was in video, but it was fairly stable.
Yeah.
I mean, the people might not have been, but
Were you like really?
no, I'm never stable. But the job more or less was. So what would you say to somebody? What do you say to somebody's partner where they're in your boat and that this person has a dream, this idea? Like, what do you say to them? I mean, it comes up. It doesn't even have to be about content creation. It doesn't have to be about filmmaking. It could be like they want to become a YouTuber. It doesn't matter. And they're going to go after something. What do you say to that?
I mean, support it within reason.
Said like a wife.
But I'm sorry. Like I'm gonna preach. My continuity of life is very important to me. And you know what? I stepped up and you know took had a job that was, I'm not super excited about, but I'm good at it, so that's fair. M- But I do that so it takes pressure off of you. So if your partner is willing to support you in that way, that I mean, it's an outlet. Otherwise, it's going to become bitterness and resentment because you didn't let me do this. And let is a odd word, but I, there are just times where you just gotta trust the process.
I get it. I just was curious to see. I mean, I think it's tricky. Jeff said stable video job. I did. I actually, the guy who fired me right after I got married, I was working as a director of photography for a company that made science documentaries. They were all like super science accurate, so they were boring as hell. And they cut me. I had become a Varicam DIT. So this is early I'm talking about tape Varicam back when it was 720p was the hot business. I think that rig, we drove to pick it up because you weren't really supposed to fly it. So we drove to pick it up from Mobile to New York. It was 26-hour trip just to pick up that camera. I remember that like implicitly. So anyway, so I was working for this guy and we would capture the footage into QuickTime. And at the time, QuickTime had an error. And that error was that there was a gamma shift in it. So anyway, long story short, I got cut. And then that same guy that let me go, his company hired me to be the DP and eventually gave me a 5-picture deal. So it's a weird dynamic. You can't always just bail on it. You just have to just keep going through with it. I see down there, somebody said their process. I asked that question earlier, what your shooting process was. Kevin Kelly says, I shoot in log, GH5, GH6. check with Rec 709 on monitor, send footage to editor. So you're doing the same process. I feel like that's a more stable process. It was just an interesting, it's not a zing on Matt by any means. I'm sure Matt knows. I mean, technically Matt knows millions of things more than me. It was just an interesting bit of dialogue that got me curious about how people approach that side of things. I've always shot, once we started shooting log, certainly with these cameras, I'm not doing log now, obviously, but with these cameras, once we started doing log, with the Reds, we had already been doing log. We were doing 3G or whatever. I can't remember the Red process now, but that whole system. And then with Ari, we never shot log C because it's a big data rate problem. So we were always shooting ProRes, but it was log ProRes, so it just wasn't log C. What about like having a family? Is that jumping subjects here, folks? Because that's what we do, like crackheads. Is how has it been from a family perspective of being able to? I mean, we have a pretty state. I mean, aside from me being gone, back when I was doing the Oklahoma stuff, where I was traveling a ton. Aside from that, it's pretty stable. I don't miss very much.
No, no. I mean, you handle the morning because I'm not home. So when you do go out of town, that's when we have to. It's a struggle, but it's not in the struggle as in the worst struggle ever. It's the grandparents step up. Luckily, we have our home base here. Our both sets of parents are here, so they're very active. But our kids are active in a lot of things. So if they have to stay after school for something, it's really not that big of a deal. Um, and we have a friend base who will take them whenever we need them. But having a family in this career
Yeah.
is tough.
Well, initially we just were going to have one and be done with it. We had one and we lost one, and then, or whatever, we lost a kid, but then we had a Finley, our oldest, um, and then from there we ended up with a second. But having a kid, the plan was with one, we felt like it was manageable to run our creative side of things and keep things going. Staying in the film industry, I think having a second kid really just nudged. I mean, I was kind of wanting to get out and go into production more like this, but that kind of nudged us over the edge. Is that just for the two of us? Because I mean, how are you going to costume manage with that much? I mean, I don't. It's possible. I'm not saying it's not. Women are way more adaptive than men in some of that stuff, but
But I can't be gone. We did that, and it didn't work out real well. That
right.
for Mary, it
For
didn't.
Mary, that's right.
And it was just an hour away, but traffic was so bad. I was falling asleep on the way home at night, so I had to wind up staying like just an hour away, but still, what does that affect?
Yeah,
What
but
am I doing?
some PA just passed away. Some kid it was an hour drive home and he just died. It was a 16-hour day and he died, fell
I
asleep,
mean,
died.
I mean, driving over, we have a big bay. We drive over and through a tunnel, and my eyes would just get heavier and heavier. And then the day I drove through a red light, granted, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning, so it wasn't traumatic, but it still that was a wake up call for me. So as far as, I mean, I would love to go back. If somebody offered me a movie today, I would be like, it would be hard for me to say no, but I'm rusty, so nobody will do that. But it's just the fact that I'll miss a lot because I work a lot, and I may not be a perfectionist in a lot of things, but in my work, I'm a perfectionist, and I can't let it go. So, but am I willing to sacrifice a job for my kids? Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Sacrifice. Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm willing to sacrifice my kids for a job.
Yes, because you know I got your back.
Because I have a parachute. I have a golden parachute. That's what really matters. Yeah, I we'll just kind of freeform from here. If anything pops up, feel free, or if you want to post it down later, if you're watching this after fact or listening, you feel free to just throw it in the comments or whatever you want on the channel if you have questions. I think the reality of all this I'm just trying to get across is just trying to reinforce with real conversations from on, like, she did not know that that's what we were going to talk about today, but I felt it more important to be like, let's have that conversation. Because the more I watch stuff on YouTube and I talk to guys like Jeff, who's in the chat, and I see the amount of effort and work going into stuff, I just don't ever want anyone to feel like it's lost, because I think YouTube is a little bit of a trap. Do you kids say thirst trap? I think that's sexual. I'm not sure. Is that what a thirst trap? Do you know what a thirst trap is?
I feel like we're past that with the generation I'm dealing with at work. You
Oh,
know, that ate that they say I bite.
I buy it. I don't even know what that means.
That means I mean.
Oh, yeah. Well, you are mean.
You bite. You bite.
All right.
Okay.
All right. There it is. But yeah, I think that a lot of times YouTube, you look at that stuff and you go down that pipeline, and it creates, we've talked about it, it creates that false sense of, you know, we all want that. We all have a desire for it. So anyway, I guess my point in saying is, if you're really trying to make it a business, yes, YouTube could be that, but I think there's other ways you can monetize your video production elements and not just make a run at the influencer side, which we all know, but just to reinforce it. And if you want to go after it, great. Just make sure you got the support system in place to make it work. Not a fallback position, because I'm not a fallback guy. I've got no fallbacks. I got zero. All I got is my skill set. Intuition is my fallback. But I do think that the opportunity is there for you to chase it if you're willing to commit to it. But you just got to find and make sure that your team is all on the same page, because it is, as we've been talking about, it is a risk and it's crazy and whatever. It's a little bit nutty. Let me check my Chatsky here. Jeff Fagan was just mentioning that he shoots log or raw, depending on the camera, but always monitor at Rec 709. Yeah. So with that, I'm just going to say, like, part of the craft show channel will always have a little bit of tech background, but my focus right now is, and I think some of it's because I'm 46 this year, just being candid about it, but my focus right now is more on trying to help you grow your business or whatever it may be. I'm not selling anything. I'm giving it all away. I feel like the best thing I can do is just spill it and be an open book for telling you everything you want to. Oh boy. Ladies and gentlemen, my mom has joined the chat. Welcome, Mom. I should have brought you on. I'm going to interview you. I'm going to make you come up here one Saturday night, and I'll pour you a glass of wine and you come up here and talk. Yep. She had to do the TikTok thing. She went over to it. Not my mom. My mom doesn't do the TikTok.
No, it's the gram.
My mom says, as an active observer, my glasses are failing me. One of your parents, let me say here, you both do very well at handling the crazy scheduling of your work. Okay, like I said, my glasses are failing me. Proud of you both. Well, thanks, Mom. I appreciate that. Mom's joined the chat. Anyway, I think that if you can find a little drive, I'm enjoying it all. I think if you can find a little bit of drive to figure out what you need to do and just find that bit of confidence, sometimes that confidence, there are days that my confidence still comes back to her. There's a lot of things. I don't think there's a project that I've ever done that you have not given me notes on.
I'm a pretty
She's mean. She's mean on them notes.
Well, I mean, would you rather be trolled or you want me to troll you?
I mean, I get trolled on here. Baby Seal Troll Force. That's an old callback.
I remember that. But I want to call out the things that the nitpickers pick.
Yeah. No, she's very good at it. That's the other side of it. Bring your partner in that way. Like if your partner is got a keen eye, they'll get one. Oh, I was going to ask you this. How much does it suck to have movies ruined? So how much reality shows do we watch? Because we know
all of them. Wrestling. I never watched wrestling in my entire life. And he had a baby. He was like, I got to watch something that doesn't have anything to do with me. Yeah. That I couldn't write. I can't. I mean, you could, but
yeah. But I mean, it's not real writing.
Yeah.
It's writing. It's just not.
Never. But there was a time where I was like, is Raw on?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Now I'm like, whatever. I've got homework to do.
Yeah. Well, it accelerated. But I guess my point is like it I think when you go down this path, whether it's, again, as I've said, if it's someone you're in a legal partnership with or someone you're just in a civil partnership with, whatever it may be, you do have to consider the fact that they're part of that. Not just because my mom's in the chat. My mom's an artist, so I was very fortunate to have someone with a sort of crazy outlook support me. My dad is a scientist, so he is very much the opposite end of the spectrum. And my mom always was there to support. So I was very lucky at a young age to have that level of support. And um, I remember the first time I made a movie that was an apology to my dad called One in the Chamber. And I remember some kid saw it. And this is like also when I realized I really wanted to be a filmmaker. Some kid saw it and came up to me and said, "Oh my God, I did." It's not a blatant apology, but in the movie, there's a metaphor on it. And he came up and he was like, "Hey man, that's rough. It's like an apology to your dad." And it like clicked into my brain. But then my dad started showing up for all of my movie stuff, and he started paying attention to it. Not just because I proved that I was a filmmaker legally on tax paperwork, but he started realizing that it's not going to change. Just like her, they're more similar, more analytical than jumping off a cliff. He jumped off the cliff because he realized that like this is the only way you're going to see me is I'm jumping off a cliff. And so the thing shifted, or we used to say islands, mom, I think it was, but he got in a canoe and came to the filmmaking island. So I'm all saying all of these things to encourage you, if you're listening, watching, whatever, to consider the idea that if you're going to pursue your business or you're going to keep driving it or you want to take your business to the next level, I have a course for you. I'm just kidding. I don't have a course. I promised I wasn't going to sell it. I'll never sell anything like that, but I will, I will sell everything if I have to. But I will say that if you are going to, if you're starting out or you've been in the business or you want to push it to the next tier, recognize a couple of things. One, that sacrifice comes with this business. There's no way around it. Sarah's talked about it. I'm telling you that. Sacrifice is very much part of it. What you're willing to sacrifice is another part of it. That includes relationships. I'm not willing to sacrifice my relationships with my family to go live in LA. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not what I'm willing to do. I had a great job that was paying really well, but I wasn't willing to sacrifice the travel time. I was gone all the time. I didn't care for it. I left the film industry because it was too much of a sacrifice against my family. Luckily for me, I was able to pivot and do something I really enjoy, which is it's inside of the craft show side of things and then YouTube content. But the other side of it is I looked at those sacrifices, but I also weighed out those conversations with her, with my partner, to say like, what are we doing together? How are we going to approach this? I brought her in, not just to manipulate her and make her be part of the process, but like quite literally at the time, pre-children, that's the only way I was going to see her. I might as well get her on set one way, shape, or another. Turns out she has a great skill set, unlock something, a passion in her that she didn't maybe know she had. So I guess all I'm trying to get to is just consider if you're going to make the jump, and I'm all for it, go for it. Just consider how far you want to go. Because some people can tell you to jump everything, but you don't know their true story. Because the background is, and trust me, having, she's shaking her head no too, but having worked in this business and for a long time, a lot of times it looks like people were scrappy and made their way up, but they had a bankroll the entire time. And once you know that it's not real, that a lot of the stuff that's told you is not real because they had a bankroll, then it takes away a lot of the flavor of it, and it also makes you go, maybe I can't do it. No, you can, but you're not going to do it the way they did it. You're going to do it your own way. So you've got to carve your own path. So that's the only thing I'm going to tell you to do is just carve your own path.
And it's slow. It can be slow.
Yeah, it's very slow.
And there's nothing wrong with that. You've, it's got to be at your own pace.
Yep.
Like you said, with the bankroll thing, it's because you didn't do this all in one day.
Nope.
There've been scary times.
It's a lot of scary times.
There's been good times, but it's you save your good times for the scary times.
Yeah, that's absolute truth. That's the reality of the situation. Jeff said, I love this direction. Great discussions and doesn't happen enough on YouTube. Jeff, you and I have talked about this in full. I can't wait. If you guys have not subscribed, Jeff, is it Reach Films? Can you put your, because you changed it recently. So put whatever your channel is, just plop that in the chat. In fact, if anybody wants to spam the chat with your channel, go for it. But I highly suggest following Jeff's channel. He and I have been collaborating more recently. He's going to be on the show a little bit to talk about stuff. Interesting journey he's had, which is fascinating. I can't wait to talk to him about it a little bit from a business perspective. Talk about pivots. That guy just figured it out. Anyway, lots of cool stuff on his channel. It's really worth having. Kevin Kelly. So shout out Kevin Kelly. He said, I think being a nanny is great training for being on a film set.
It is 100%. Especially if you're a PA.
No, it's totally your PA.
Hey, do you have eyes on? Do you have eyes on?
Right.
Yeah, they're everywhere. I don't know.
Yeah. That's totally true. There's a terrible story. She used to, so pre me, so she worked for weird kismet stuff, but she worked for the guy who fired me that would eventually make me move to Missouri. But she worked for his daughter as not his daughter's nanny, but the nanny for the like. So basically, the daughter had children, and she worked for him. Anyway, so she was the nanny in that family. And for before I never met her, but for years, all these baked goods would come to the office. And I mean, I was, back then I was young, I could eat whatever I wanted. So we would all just like me and this guy named Jared Jones and Ben Walls, but we would eat all these snacks in the office. And when we started dating, she was like, "Hey, don't eat those." I was like, "Well," and I'm just thinking about how many pans of brownies I probably consumed. She was like, They pick their nose, scratch their butts. I don't really. There's no sanitation. They're not. Those kids are clean, but what they do with that dough is not necessarily healthy." And I'm just thinking, like, I've just shoved these baby butt flakes all up in my mouth, and that's what we called it. It was like, oh, great, another. And so then I finally told Jared, I was like, and we would watch other people eat them. Not true story of terribleness. And I was like, "Hey man, don't eat those. They have baby butt flakes in them." And he was like, "What are you talking about?" But it's true story. Like, it's legitimate. So I don't eat brownies. Any brownies that come to the office from anybody, unless they're from my own home. And if I watched who made them, if our kids made them, I won't touch them.
Oh, they're not babies anymore. They're fine.
No, they still like, who knows what they do with that stuff.
Just one chews their toenails. That's fine.
That is true. We have a child that chews toenails. Checking the chat on that side of it. All right. So I'm going to wrap it up with that. We went a little bit long, which is delightful. Oh man, ads. We'll skip the ads. It said, I got to skip the ads. That's kind of fun. I should skip it for you folks. Have you been served an ad this whole time? I don't know. Thanks for hanging out with us. I'm going to kill it here. If you would like to, if you have any other questions or you'd like to join the conversation, whatever it is, we're going to try and do these most Saturdays. We'll see how it goes. Most Saturdays, we're going to try and do this at 7 p.m. Central Time. So do your math from there. Horst was on last week, Sarah this week, Jeff maybe next week. We don't know what's going to happen. It's all just a wild thing. But thank you for hanging out with us. I deeply, deeply appreciate it. If you got value out of this, do me a huge favor. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. And please, 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 please go hang out on Jeff's channel too and troll him some, because I don't need any more trolling. I got plenty of it. And he's the best anyway. Thank you very much. I'm going to kill the